Hello and a very warm welcome viewers. You're watching this special presentation of Sansad TV with your host Kirti Mishra. And joining us in the studio is a very special guest, member of Lok Sabha, Mr. Manish Tiwari. So welcome to Sansad TV and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
So let's begin talking about your parliamentary journey. You're known as a very, very exuberant parliamentarian, known for your articulate stances. Take us through your parliamentary journey, sir.
Well, it's been an interesting journey. I joined public life as a student activist way back in 1981. Those days there was no 10+2. So after school, you would straight go to college and you would join something which was called pre-university, which is now class 11th. And so therefore I enrolled as a member of the National Students' Union of India, which is the student wing of the Congress, in 1981. Became the vice president of my college in 1983, and subsequently, simultaneously became the acting president of the college. I was nominated as General Secretary of the Punjab State NSUI just around the time when Punjab was getting into a lot of violent turmoil. And then I served as the National Secretary of the NSUI, the National General Secretary, as the National President of the NSUI, then as the President of the International Union of Students, then as Secretary of the All India Congress Committee, after that the National President of the Indian Youth Congress. The reason why I am sketching all this out is that before I fought my first Lok Sabha elections in 2004, I already had almost a 2.5 decade political career below my belt. And thus it wasn't a case that Parliament was the starting of my political career. In fact, there was a 25-year period before that where I cut my political teeth, and that journey actually prepared me for the subsequent parliamentary career which followed.
That's right, sir. As you were talking about your political journey, NSUI, minister, in the opposition, you've seen it all. But what has been the most defining moment in your political career so far?
Well, I think the most defining moment of my political career has been that God and people have been extremely kind. I have had the privilege now of representing 3 different parliamentary constituencies. Ludhiana from 2009 to 14, when I served as Union Minister for Information and Broadcasting in the Government of India. Subsequently, as Member of Parliament from Sri Anandpur Sahib, where the Khalsa Panth was consecrated by Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj on the 13th of April 1699, which is considered to be the birthplace of the Sikh faith, and then the capital of both Chandigarh and of Punjab and Haryana, Chandigarh. And so therefore, I think the most defining moment has been that wherever the party asked me to contest from, people have been extremely kind and they've given me a chance, and I've tried to serve them to the best of my ability.
So I'm going to ask a bit of an unfair question now. 3 constituencies, Ludhiana, Sri Anandpur Sahib and Chandigarh. Which has been the closest to your heart as a parliamentary constituency?
Well, all the 3 constituencies are equally close to my heart. And I keep serving the people of all the 3 constituencies as we speak today. And there has been an extremely diverse experience. See, Ludhiana was the center, or is the center, of the medium and small scale enterprises, the MSME industry. So it has a lot of light engineering, it has other garments, textiles, it has a very, very vibrant other small scale industries, and then it has a very rural hinterland. So 6 constituencies are urban, 3 are rural. So it was a very diverse experience dealing with multifarious challenges. Sri Anandpur Sahib is completely a rural constituency, 1499 villages, out of which I personally, notwithstanding COVID, visited about 1265 villages over a span of 5 years. It has 13 municipal councils, a municipal corporation in Mohali. And then, of course, Chandigarh is a completely urban constituency and is controlled by the Ministry of Home Affairs. And so, therefore, it is a kind of a bureaucratic, panacea, so as to say, for people who get posted to Chandigarh, because there is no state government which exercises oversight. So Chandigarh is a very, very different experience, and since it is also the capital of both Punjab and Haryana, all the pulls and pressures which go with representing a capital are all there. So yes, all three of these constituencies have been very diverse in their socio-economic, political construct, but it's been a very, very rewarding experience.
So as a representative, how are you trying to change the social and economic firmament of Chandigarh?
Well, essentially, the governance model of Chandigarh has to be completely re-engineered. See, Chandigarh was never supposed to be a union territory. When the Constitution of India was consecrated, at that point in time, there were certain Part C and Part D states. Yes. And the Part C and Part D states, by the Reorganization Act of 1956, then became union territories. So Chandigarh wasn't one of the original union territories. This was a replacement, a new city which was built to replace Lahore, which was the capital of British Punjab, on the cusp of independence/partition, which we in Punjab do not call Batwara, but we call it Ujada, devastation. So Chandigarh became the capital of that divided Punjab, or East Punjab as it was called. And then the Pepsu states were merged into it in 1956. And then in 1966 there was trifurcation of Punjab. Haryana got formed, and some parts went to Himachal Pradesh, which was then a union territory, and some other parts. Chandigarh became a union territory in its own right as a consequence of the Punjab Reorganization Act, Section 4 of that Act.
Yes.
Now, this was supposed to be an interim solution till the political question of Chandigarh wasn't settled. So a temporary administrative arrangement was put into place. It's almost been 5 decades since then, 6 decades since then. From 66 we are almost in 2026, but the political question of Chandigarh remains unsettled. And therefore an administrative arrangement which was supposed to be ad hoc and transitory in nature got perpetuated into perpetuity. And so therefore you have a governance model which is not accountable to the people of Chandigarh. So there are two spheres of governance.
Yes.
So there is a larger sphere which falls to the remit of the Chandigarh administration, which is directly under the Ministry of Home Affairs. And then there is a municipal corporation, which is a smaller sphere. So you have to fundamentally re-engineer the governance model of Chandigarh in order to make it responsive to the aspirations of the people of Chandigarh. Otherwise, this city will atrophy and die over the next 2 or 3 decades as we speak. So that is my fundamental focus, and that is my fundamental challenge, to re-engineer this governance model so that this city, which was conceived as the ideologically unfettered dream of a modern Indian republic, stepping out of the shadows of British imperialism into a brave new world, can live on.
Also the fact, how are you articulating the aspirations of the people of Chandigarh, being their voice on the floor of Parliament?
Well, in certain senses of the word, I am a little lucky, right? So a large number of the problems that people have are actually in the sphere of municipal corporations, municipal councils. Most of them are day-to-day bread and butter issues. Now, when I was in Punjab, most of these issues actually fell to the remit of the state government.
Yes.
So obviously you could not raise them on the floor of parliament.
Yes.
But in the case of Chandigarh, since it's a union territory, so everything falls to the remit of parliament. Now that gives me the flexibility, the leverage, and I try and use it to the fullest extent possible to articulate each and every issue of Chandigarh on the floor of the House. And as a consequence of this continuous articulation over the past 16 months, there has been forward movement on a large number of issues which were pending or hanging fire for the last 2.5 decades.
The most important one for you?
Well, essentially there are 5 big issues which are afflicting Chandigarh as we currently speak. The first is that the Supreme Court, because it wanted to correctly discourage apartmentalization in Chandigarh, which would have led to an increased density of population, gave a judgment. As a consequence of that judgment, or rather an erroneous interpretation of that judgment, the Chandigarh administration banned the share-wise sale of property all across the city.
Yeah.
Now, this has introduced a new kind of preemptory jurisprudence, whereby an arbitrage has got built into the system. And this is affecting a lot of people who need to sell their assets for medical treatment, to send their children abroad. And again, the matter is before the Supreme Court. So my first and foremost concern is that this erroneous interpretation of a Supreme Court judgment, which led to this ban, needs to be revisited, and this needs to be removed. The second big issue is, there are a lot of rehabilitation colonies around Chandigarh.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So these rehabilitation colonies were set up essentially to provide a roof for those people who had played a role in the construction of Chandigarh. And these properties are all on leasehold. Right? These people have now been living in them for 4 or 5 decades. So my priority is that they should be given proprietary rights over these properties, so that they can call that roof over their head as their own. The third biggest issue is, when Chandigarh was built, there are 22 villages which gave their land in order to facilitate the construction of Chandigarh. Now, there is a concept called Lal Dora,
yes.
The red line,
yes.
which segregates populated areas from agricultural areas. But in the case of Chandigarh, since all these villages were incorporated into the municipal corporation, the revenue concept of a red line has ceased to exist. But for some strange reason, the Chandigarh administration continues to persevere with it. And thereby it denies basic civic facilities to people who live outside this alleged red line or Lal Lakir or Lal Dora, as it is called. The fourth issue is that there is a large number of cooperative group housing societies which has come up on the southern extremity of Chandigarh. Now, this borders Punjab, and there are a large number of small niggling issues which actually require a little application of mind to be resolved, but unfortunately they are not getting resolved. And of course, the fifth very critical issue is with regard to the future of Chandigarh, because since Chandigarh cannot have large manufacturing industry, so how do you really create a fourth industrial revolution infrastructure premised on genomics, robotics, the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, which can actually power the economy of that city, and not only the economy of that city, but the economy of the region as a whole. And finally, there is this question of a metro, which would connect Panchkula, Chandigarh, Mohali and New Chandigarh, and release the creative energies of the people of the entire, it's not even a tri-city, it's 4 cities now. So therefore, these are the 4 or 5 big things which need to be done for the future of the city.
So we do hope that all these issues are addressed. I'll talk about the other aspects as well, but before talking about those aspects, finally talking about your parliamentary experience. You've been part of very, very important parliamentary committees. How has that been, and how do you define that?
See, today every institution in this country is under severe stress, and the most stressed are our legislative institutions. Parliament being the primary institution, which is completely and absolutely losing relevance. When the first Parliament met, it met for 135 days. The last Parliament, the one from 2019 to 2024, the 17th Lok Sabha, met for only 55 days. Right? And the current Parliament, as has been the norm now going back 2.5 decades or more, sees more disruption and less work.
Exactly.
As a consequence, we are becoming a 2-horse democracy, an executive and the judiciary. In states, it is much worse. Assemblies hardly meet for a couple of days. In fact, the total duration that an assembly might meet for would be 20 days in a year, 21 days in a year. And this is really unhealthy. So therefore, the first and foremost thing is that Parliament must work under any and all circumstances.
Right.
Since Parliament is meeting only for 55 odd days in a year, people have 295 days to do all the political agitations that they want, outside Parliament. Parliament, being a deliberative body, must function in a manner where it just does justice to the 1.4 billion people it ostensibly claims to represent. And their government also needs to be extremely flexible. They need to accommodate the concerns of the opposition, and that is why at one point in time I had suggested to the Speaker that between 6 and 9 in the evening, or between 5 and 8 in the evening, at least on 3 days a week, there should be one 193 discussion in the Lok Sabha and under the corresponding rule in the Rajya Sabha, which is on a subject which has been commonly agreed to by the entire opposition. So in that manner, you can have the question hour, you can have the 0 hour, you can have government business, and you can have the concerns of the opposition also addressed. And this would actually help the smooth and efficacious functioning of Parliament. Otherwise, what has happened as a consequence of these continuous disruptions is that Parliament has become irrelevant to the national debate. Right? People go and discuss things in television studios, things which ideally they should be discussing, or issues that they should be discussing on the floor of their house. And ultimately, as a consequence of the conduct of parliamentarians and legislators across the board and across political parties, you have a situation whereby whether Parliament functions or it doesn't function, it has stopped mattering to the people of this country.
Of course.
And that is a huge crisis of confidence. And the other thing which has taken conscience, constituency and common sense out of Parliament is the 10th schedule, the anti-defection law. It has not stopped defection. From a retail activity, it became a wholesale activity. Now it has become a mega mart activity. But as a consequence, the contribution of members of Parliament to parliamentary proceedings as a consequence of whip-driven tyranny has become completely marginal. If you look at the Parliament debates before 1985 and look at the parliamentary debates after 1985, especially on legislation, on government legislation, which is the most important function of parliament, you would find a sea of difference. For the simple reason, earlier, MP knew that his vote mattered. And therefore, not only with the opposition, within the ranks of the treasury benches, the ministers had to walk the extra mile in order to build a consensus on legislation. Now, of course, it is the subject of a whip-driven tyranny. Some joint secretary in the ministry incubates a legislation. The minister comes out and reads a prepared statement. There is a pro forma debate which takes place. And after that, the opposition benches usually vote no, and the treasury benches usually vote yes. A large number of people wouldn't even know the contents of the legislation that they are voting on. These are, unfortunately, the hard questions which parliamentarians and the leadership of parliament across political parties and even those who occupy constitutional positions are not willing to grapple with.
So as you're saying that all sides need to come together and there shouldn't be disruptions, but Parliament should debate, discuss and deliberate. But
yes,
moving on,
for that, opposition certainly has a role, but government has an equal role in providing the space to the opposition so that the concerns of the opposition can also be articulated on the floor of the Parliament. The problem comes when government becomes inflexible and thinks that the only reason why Parliament exists is to pass government bills. But with great respect, that is not the only reason why Parliament exists.
We hope there's consensus and we see fruitful discussions and debates. But moving on, sir, talking about your literary works. You're known for some of the literary marvels. What inspired you to document India's national security and strategic contours?
Well, fortunately, my constituents have provided me the space and time, and of course my profession as a lawyer has also provided me the flexibility to write 4 books. My 5th book is also done as we speak. Hopefully we should be releasing it during the winter session of Parliament. And it's my belief that national security in the context of the neighborhood that we live in remains India's primary challenge, now going back to 1947. So the last book which I wrote, which essentially was about 10 national security situations over 20 years, was an attempt to try and document that there has to be a strategic continuum across the tenure of various governments and administrations, because with a change that the electoral cycle may bring about, India's internal security and external challenges do not go away. Absolutely. And if there is a break or a reversal of positions and we are not able to stay the course, it only helps our adversaries. And so therefore, on these critical questions of national security and international relations, there has to be and must be a minimum consensus, a kind of a consensus that we achieved in 1991 when we initiated economic liberalization and started restructuring the Indian economy, which has now held the field for almost 4 decades, right, across the tenure of different governments. So similarly on national security and international relations, this multi-partisan consensus is very essential, is very imperative, especially given the fact that as we speak today, the world is in a complete churn. The old order has collapsed, the global order which emerged after the Second World War, and a new order is yet to take shape. And as I often say, we are in the age of monsters, and India needs to be very careful how it navigates and negotiates the next couple of years and decades of its journey as a nation state.
Absolutely, sir. Very, very legit point. And before we end this conversation, lawyer, politician, writer, treading all the paths very, very meticulously. What is your message to all the budding politicians or youngsters who look up to you?
Do not enter politics till the time you do not have an independent profession. You do not have the means to stand on your feet, because the era of whole-time politicians is over. It is an era of specialization. It's an era of a value addition that you must make if you come into public service. And that is what really the younger generations are now expect out of their politicians. So therefore, for anybody who wants to come into public service, first and foremost, he must economically stand on his own 2 feet, make a place for himself in his or her profession where he or she are respected, and then there is enough time to come and contribute to both the nation and the world that we live in whatever capacity someone who has an interest in this particular field desires.
That's a very, very pragmatic suggestion, sir. I hope all those budding politicians are listening to that. On that note, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your perspective with us. It was a very, very meaningful and interesting conversation, sir.
Thank you very much for inviting me to Sansad TV. Wish you all the best, and I do hope that you will keep covering parliamentary proceedings, which over a period of time should become more meaningful rather than inane.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, viewers, that's all we had for you in this edition. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to Sansad TV. Goodbye for now from my side.
To watch more programs of Sansad TV, subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to like and share them.